So your parents know we're coming tonight, right?
On a beautiful spring morning, Jeff Stewart and Jessica Barron were making their way to Las Vegas to do what lovebirds do, tie the knot.
What if your mom doesn't like me?
Oh, wait, 2 sugars and 2 creams, all right? Thanks.
But as they clowned around at a rest stop, they had no idea their day was about to come undone.
Stop! Please, come on. Let's just get in the car and go. We're so close.
While mugging for their video camera, the young couple heard a terrible screaming. It was coming from behind a semi-truck that had just pulled to a stop.
Oh, my God!
What they saw was something that will haunt them forever. A man torn in two, clinging to life. Frank Soriani had been under his pickup truck fixing a broken muffler. The driver of the semi didn't see Frank lying on the ground below and ran him over, severing his lower body from his upper torso. Remarkably, the poor man was still alive.
Well, when the body would be severed in half or blown in half, you see that a lot with war victims. You see it with people who get run over by a train that cuts them in half. As long as you have a complete circulation of blood in your body, you should survive it. If you cut off your legs, the circulation can still travel down the aorta and go back up to the heart. It can bypass the legs with no problem.
With Frank still kicking, more or less, paramedics arrived to transport both halves of his body to a local trauma center. In a twist of fate, EMT crews lost an hour because each half was sent to a different hospital. Doctors spent several hours trying to save Soriani's life, but he finally expired, an incredible 3.5 hours after the accident occurred. On September 10th, 1945, Lloyd Olson chopped off the head of a chicken for that night's dinner. To his surprise, the chicken remained alive for 18 more months. Lloyd had cut off the head, but much of the brainstem remained intact. Mike the headless chicken was fed grain and water through an eyedropper.
This whole box, right?
This is the one.
All right, I'm going to...
Milos Dudek, a Czechoslovakian immigrant, felt like a very lucky man.
How deep you want? You want deeper?
Brand new to this country with a wife and baby to support, his construction job was his lifeline. Milos was a model employee, if there ever was one. Tim McNamara, on the other hand, was a model for disaster. More often than not, he would show up nursing a major hangover. Today, he took the wheel of his dump truck flat out drunk. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. As Tim backed up his truck filled with 3 tons of sand, Milos had no idea the crushing blow fate was about to deal him. Within seconds, Milos disappeared under 3 tons of sand. His co-workers rushed to his rescue and quickly uncovered his head, allowing him to breathe. They thought they had saved him.
Jimmy, say something.
If you've got all this weight crushing in on you around your chest cavity, there's no way that your chest can expand because the weight of the sand would push your chest cage in. As you let air out, they increase the pressure so you can't open your lungs. He would get closer and closer to death with every breath. The only way they could have saved him would have been to have really dug fast and gotten the sand away from his chest cage.
Unable to take a breath, Milos was dying of something called crush asphyxia, a medical term to describe the constriction of the lungs by compressing the torso.
Unfortunately, this wouldn't happen very quickly. He would be aware of what's going on for probably a few minutes. Actually, be a pretty horrible way to die.
What do you get when you mix a couple of good old boys, too many beers, and a small arsenal of firearms? Your basic hillbilly holiday. But these guys got more than they bargained for. In a world where there's 1,000 ways to die, this one strikes you when you least expect it. Bobby, Joe, and Daryl were two brothers looking to blow off some steam. What better way than to jump into your pickup truck, go out in the middle of nowhere, and shoot off some guns? Other than the brain-crippling hangover they were facing, nobody gets hurt, and they get a day's worth of laughs. Things were going according to plan until Daryl decided to scare the pants off his little brother. Bobby Joe hit the ground and was dead within minutes. But not from a gunshot wound. Bobby had the bad luck to fall on top of a rattlesnake, who dug his fangs into Bobby's chest and released his venom just above his heart.
My name is Jules Sylvester, and this is enough rattlesnake venom to kill over a dozen people. 95% of the people getting bitten by snakes, they're under 27 years old, they're with their buddies, they've had a couple of beers, and they think they're hot stuff. And the snake says, "No, you're not. I'll kill you. Ready? Say on." Oh. Oh. Jesus Christ. Very pissed off. You see the drops there? Those 10 drops came out of one fang alone. All it takes is one drop to knock you on your butt. The fangs are hollow, just like a hypodermic. And it's a perfect design. They'll go in, stab, squirt, and pull out in a fraction of a second. It's very, very fast.
Rattlesnake venom can cause major damage throughout the body, destroying tissue and organs, and disrupts blood clotting. Severe envenomation combined with delayed or ineffective treatment can lead to the loss of a limb and ultimately death.
So if you're a drunken redneck, you spent the whole day out in the hot sun drinking like 12 beers and shooting off guns, and you fall on a snake and you basically just got bit. What do you think's going through your mind?
Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That's about it. You're not going to make it, mate.
Technically, rattlesnakes are not poisonous. They are venomous, delivering their toxin directly into the bloodstream. A poison is ingested. You could actually drink a vial of rattlesnake venom and feel no ill effects. The girl in red is Lori Paffhausen. After a string of bad relationships, Lori's ready to swear off men altogether.
Oh my God, you can do better than him, I'm telling you.
She's decided to satisfy a bisexual curiosity that has consumed her since junior high.
Oh my God, my feet are killing me.
If it wasn't for the 4-inch stilettos that had been pinching her feet since the evening began,
oh, that's so much better.
tonight might well have been a first for Lori. Instead, it would be her last. Before crossing the street, Lori steps into a shallow puddle next to a traffic pole. She doesn't see the exposed wires at the bottom of the pole. She doesn't know they were feeding thousands of volts of raw current into the water.
The fact that she was standing in a puddle of water increased her conductivity for an electrical shock. The fact that she was barefoot greatly increased her probability that she would be shocked very severely.
Lori is about to learn a scientific truth the hard way. Wet skin has 10 times the conductivity of dry. By placing her hand on the metal pole, Lori becomes a human circuit.
Basically, what happened to her is that she completed an electrical circuit. If the light pole was made of metal, it's grounded, of course, because it's mounted in the ground. So she completed an electrical circuit that caused enough current to pass through her body, from her feet, through her hands where she was touching the pole, that caused defibrillation of the heart, which means the heart stops, basically. There's enough current and enough voltage there that caused electrocution. So she died of electrical shock.
Meet Mark Vogel, or what's left of him, as paramedics carry his decomposed body out of his suburban Paris home. It's important not to feel pity for his lost soul. This death should be filed under what in God's name was he thinking? Mr. Vogel was a classic recluse, preferring the creepy and the crawly over his fellow man. Mark made a meager living dealing snakes, lizards, and insects on the shady black market for exotic pets. These creatures were his comfort and constant companions. Several were deadly and not to be taken lightly. But it was his fascination for the smallest of his friends that led to his ultimate demise. Mark so loved his black widow spider, he gave it a name, Elvira, and he longed to be closer to his tiny femme fatale. Snake handlers are often bit so many times they build up an immunity. Mark thought he could do the same thing, so one fateful day he lowered his arm into Elvira's home and took her best shot. Within an hour of being bit, Mark began experiencing all the symptoms associated with a black widow bite, starting with severe stomach pains. His body was now in a free fall of failing health.
You're going to feel a lot of pain initially because it's a very painful bite. And then the pain will start to sort of track up the arm and get towards more of the core of your body. And the pain itself will start to spread throughout the rest of your body as well. And will concentrate on a lot of the large muscle groups that you have. One of the most interesting places where we see a lot of the pain and rigidity and stiffness is right there in the abdominal muscles. So sometimes these patients come in, they actually look like they're having appendicitis or maybe a bowel obstruction or something like that. Primarily what the venom contains is a neurotoxin. So you can get a number of different symptoms that can include pain and numbness and tingling and also nausea and vomiting and diarrhea. All of these things can happen at the same time. A lot of sweating as well, in addition to racing heart and very high spikes in their blood pressures. So these are the reasons that a patient may actually have a bad outcome, such as death, when they actually bleed into their brain or they actually have a heart attack because of all these other symptoms that appear. We always advise that no matter what happens to you when you're bit by a black widow, just get to the hospital as soon as possible.
Mark foolishly chose to ride out his condition. His reward? A fatal heart attack. In his delirium, he released his gruesome menagerie of pets. It would be 2 weeks before his rotting stench brought the French police to his door. In a stroke of irony, Mark ensured the survival of his pets while engineering his own death. The snakes, bugs, and lizards were kept alive by feeding on their master's lifeless flesh. As soon as he subjected himself to the Black Widow's deadly toxin, like the hourglass imprinted on its underbelly, Mark's time began running out, with death the only outcome. $5,000 Americans are treated annually for spider bites. On average, 2 people die each year from the bite of a black widow. The world's most dangerous creature, the mosquito, responsible for 2 million deaths per year worldwide. Hector Madera is here to repair an industrial-sized clothes dryer at one of the largest hospitals in the Los Angeles area.
I'm gonna get in there. Can you hit the power?
Following safety procedure, Hector has his partner kill the breaker before climbing inside the giant dryer. What he didn't realize was his partner cut off the power to the wrong machine. The unit he was now inside of was still hot. Hector was trapped. He knew he had only a few seconds before the dryer would start its cycle. Spinning wildly and hitting temperatures well over 200 degrees, or Hector was being shaked and baked to death.
A 200-degree environment, you would only survive a matter of just a few minutes. I'm sure he couldn't get leverage to kick his way out of the dryer, so he's tumbling around in there. His core temperature is going up above 105 and staying there. Therefore, he would start to destroy his muscles, destroy your kidneys, you destroy other organs.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hector! Hector! Hector!
6 long minutes later, his partner finally returned, but it was too late. An unusual fate, but not unheard of. Each year, as many as 20 others perish in a similar manner. Oftentimes teenagers looking for a thrill ride, but finding themselves trapped in a machine set on Tumble Die. Who lives and who dies? Sometimes it's just a matter of luck. It was another day of racing at Daytona Speedway, America's temple of high speed and danger. The drivers were giving the crowd what they came to see. Paramedic Mike Staley was working the race that fateful day. When it came to helping others, Mike was in a class by himself. A 20-year veteran of the Port Orange Fire Department, Mike was part of an elite crew chosen to work at the Daytona racetrack. He was here to save other people's lives, but was about to be fighting for his own. The out-of-control race car smashed into him at 100 miles per hour and wound up pinning him under 2,000 pounds of hot steel.
I'd go to move my hips and nothing's working. I'd go to move my legs and nothing's working. And the only thing that I could smell was my own human flesh melting to the vehicle.
Mike was airlifted to a local hospital where surgeons worked feverishly to pull him back from the brink of death.
You ask anybody who sees the film, he's lucky to be alive.
Once stabilized, the hospital staff had to piece together Mike's shattered body, which they described as a bag of grape nuts.
I'm no stranger to danger and the fact of having things come around me and being a survivor. I plan for it. I live for it every day.
Who lives and who dies? Someone else might not have survived such a violent impact. It was the worst day of paramedic Mike Staley's life and the luckiest.